Mastermind with Brandon and Warp 3000 John. And we're going to talk about Brandon's third place after Swiss and like his rationale for his deck. I'm super excited. John, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw your list as soon as decks got posted, and I was like, this is the sickest blue-red list in the entire tournament. I have been telling my friends that Queen is really good and underrated because it's a 3/3 body. You can't brawl it. It's hard for a lot of decks to just answer it outright before it gets value. It makes Workshop look crazy. And yours was like the list that takes the most advantage of this I've seen. So what were like some of the reasonings behind some of these choices? Because you had the most unique blue-red list by far.
Yeah, well, you kind of hit the nail on the head. A lot of decks really struggle to deal with a turn three queen. And going into the event, me and my brothers and like the people that were kind of refining this deck had played it, quite a few times, both on Pixelborn and sort of internally. And we came to the conclusion that if you play a queen on 3, activate it, and hit a workshop, that might as well be Exodia. Like, you actually cannot lose a game in which the queen cheats in a workshop. Like, there's just way too much value over the course of a game against virtually anything. You'll start to outdraw the Bucky decks. The blue-red mirror, you'll just drown them in card advantage. It's kind of the same for blue-gray. It's a little bit different because they have wheel or the whole new world, but kind of a similar deal. That she just creates so much value so quickly. And the red removal, especially like when you start bringing back in the uninkable 3-drop Sisu, combined with the ice blocks, like you're just so able to deal with everything in these colors that the priority of the deck really needs to switch to creating a unbeatable card game engine. Tamatoa and Dime also kind of take care of any late game lore gaining problems that you might have otherwise. So between the workshops, the queens, and just the litany of items that are in the deck, it's meant to just grind out long games, take care of any problematic creatures, and then just eventually win with a Tamatoa combo kill.
Yeah, so one thing I had noticed is I actually was spectating one of your games against Red Purple, which is traditionally considered an extremely unfavorable matchup. And you managed to 2-0 him, and I saw something interesting. I saw you hadn't used Flavor Sham. I don't know if you inked him or you just didn't see any, but you just kept your items stacked and then just 0-20'd him and just killed him out of nowhere. Is that your game plan into Red Purple? Is that how you approach that match?
0-20, wow.
Yeah, so it's one of the modes that the deck can take, and part of, playing the deck for a long time, you kind of get this sense of like, one of two things is going to happen, right? Either your opponent's going to be at 0 cards in hand because you just traded all of your removal for their removal, drew a bunch of cards, and then eventually you play a Tamatoa that's not going to get answered, and it kind of quests twice to win. Or if that's not going to happen because they've played a bunch of rabbits, bounced a bunch of rabbits, done a bunch of stuff to where they're going to be keeping up in cards, then the game plan eventually switches to get 1 or 2 workshops down, draw a million cards, ink a million with fishbone quills until you get to that critical 10 items and 2 of them are dime stage, and then you just play Tamatoa and win from 0. And the deck kind of does both of those things. It can switch into both of those paths really nicely into the grind them out of cards or combo kill them route, and it's one of the really enticing things about the deck.
So let's go over some of the more interesting items here. So you played a crossbow and a medallion, which I'm a big fan of both of. How did they perform for you? And what matchups were they in for?
The crossbow overperformed the entire event. So one interesting thing about the crossbow is it's got that really juicy destroy a dragon ability for the blue-red mirror. And when you get to activate that, you just feel on top of the world. I mean, you just played a 3-mana dragon fire, basically, that Queen could find, that could trigger Workshop, that Hiram can sack in an emergence. I mean, it's just unbelievable value in the red-blue matchup. But even in matchups that don't have dragons, the 2 mana to shrink something suddenly makes your baby Sisus, the uninkable 3/1, relevant in the late game. Suddenly you can pay 5 mana to kill things with 3 or less power. Suddenly your Medusas kill Tamatoas for 8 mana. They become cheaper Maleficents, basically. So in these matchups where you don't hit Ice Block, it can kind of turn on to make all of your damage brawls in the same way, all of your power-based removal active, and it's just inkable. And so, like, if none of those things are going to come up, then it becomes your ink. Queen can get it. One part of those cards is that you really want your deck to have like around 20 items so that Queen and Scuttle can consistently hit. And so it's just one of those items that turns on the Queen that is inkable, that costs 3, that makes the rest of the deck work. I was in love with Fang Crossbow the entire event. Medallion Weight's a little bit less so. We talked about switching it for Vital Sphere. At the end of the event, I could see either of those being correct, either Medallion Weights or Vital Sphere. When Medallion Weights works, it works really well, but the problem is you kind of need to have a creature already, and you need to have it and the mana. And at that stage, the deck's generally already winning because it's a late game value deck anyway. And so like Medallion doesn't really change losing board states to winning board states, whereas Vital Sphere, you can because of the rush, it can be used to take out Queen's Castles with things like
Yeah, every
what
Tamatoa with a vitality.
exactly, like it can turn that on really nicely, and it's cheaper for triggering workshops and sacking to Haram. So it's possible Medallion Weights is supposed to be Vital Sphere. I'm not sure, but the Fang Crossbow is really good.
So, Brandon and John, we have
Mhm.
somebody in the chat that says, one jump haters rise up. So, why did you
Oh
not
yeah.
put one jump into your red blue list?
Oh, I'm a big one jump hater. One jump's
You
a bad
are?
card. No, no, I mean, it's not a bad card, but part of the reason that we played it last set was because we didn't have any like really strong tempo 3-drops. Like the deck basically just played Fishbone Quill, and that's not like a very powerful turn 3 anyway. And so skipping turn 3 was really powerful. You could get into things like Grammatala, or just play your Haram, of course, or How Far I'll Go. But now that the deck is playing Workshop and Queen and a litany of random items that you can play, we just don't need to skip turn 3 anymore. I'd rather not play one jump, guarantee that my late game's not going to accidentally draw a one drop and just draw a blank card, and instead just curve out. We also have Scuttle now that we can play on 2. We have 2-drop items and just double Popsicle, Ice Block. Just we have so much stuff to do on turn 1, 2, and 3 that one jump is just not necessary anymore.
Yeah, that actually segues into my next question perfectly, because I was going to talk about Cruella and how she actually did, whether she was ink mostly or whether she performed her role well.
Yeah, so her role is to mostly not let enemy Flynn's turn on. So like if you're on the draw and the purple red player plays Flynn on 2, you'd really like to play something on your 2 that doesn't give them 3 lore. And we were having a lot of problems with that kind of curve in testing against like the aggressive red purple decks. She also can take out Diablos. She acts like a Smee when you have ice blocks in play, because if your curve is ice block Cruella, then suddenly she gets to duel with things that have 2 power and live, and that always feels really good. Yeah, and it's as we said, when you take out one jump, you just kind of need more things to do on the 2-mana curve. She's not awesome. I'm not completely in love with her, but it was important to have a 2-drop that challenged the board in lieu of one jump, and I think she did that role really well. Like I wouldn't take her out.
She's also invasive too. So I feel like that
Yeah.
also helps like the red blue matchup versus whenever other people
Yeah,
play
she
these
randomly makes
characters.
it so like they're like Pegasus, if they're still on the Pegasus version,
Yeah.
can't quest and Diablo and all that, and that's nice. Yeah.
So you said it was for the red purple matchup, which I was thinking more for the Diablo Pegasus line, but it makes sense to stop the Flynn because a lot of people consider red purple to be this deck's biggest weakness. But you managed to 2-0 it. So what is your plan into red purple to guarantee those wins against like the castle and the aggressive Flynn starts?
Right. Well, the plan number 1 is just hope they don't draw very many castles. So, you can't really do much about that. We're still playing 3 Maui, and I think 3 is the right number. It's so awkward because uh, I actually think Maui's not very good into basically everything else, and I would have liked to play less than 3, except that it is so necessary against Queen's Castle that you kind of have to keep it at that and then just hope you hit it. But yeah, I mean, beating them, as far as I'm concerned, is basically just trying to stay ahead on board, trying to keep the queen, like even queen as a 3-mana 3/3 plays into that board really well. Sometimes it's important to play Fishbone Quill to get your hand really empty for their 3-drop inkable Sisus. And then just try and, a lot of the time, because you're not going to outgrind in card advantage a deck that plays like Rabbit, and sometimes playing 3-drop Maleficent. I know that's getting out of flavor, but sometimes they still do. You're generally not going to grind them to 0 cards. So a lot of the time you just got to keep their 2 lore questers out, try to ramp up with Fishbone Quill very quickly, try to get to that 10 item stage, and then get a Tamatoa to stick and kill them.
That makes sense. So how good was the 3-cost Sisu that was uninkable? Because I saw a lot of people play no copies. They're on none of it. They're just on like 2 ice block. But that 3-cost Sisu looks really good to me, especially
Yeah.
against all the aggressive like 2 power units in the game with 1 ice cube. Seems like it turns the
Absolutely.
tempo very well.
It's kind of a funny card because like the rest of the deck is all synergy combo pieces with like Queen and 3-drop items and then like the Tamatoa dime package. And that card is in there because it is just intrinsically broken. Like it's not even doing anything specifically good for the deck. That card is just a mistake. It is so good being 3 cost, 4 toughness, having 2 lore, and just having an insane amount of power against the matchups where it's going to matter. It also has the name Sisu, which is nice against a lot of the green gray decks. One of the plans is to early shift the 8-drop Sisu and try to take out their Buckies, their Diablos, and all that good stuff, their other stuff if you have ice blocks in play. And so one of the things we wanted was just more cards with the name Sisu that we could play on 3. It being inkable is nice, and it just being a completely busted card is.
Did you like the Sisu ratio, the 3-2 split on the 3-drops? Would you change that in the future, or were they performing their roles?
Yeah, I think I might consider going to 2 of the 8-drop Sisu instead of 3. It's nice when it's nice, I guess, but being an uninkable 8-drop is pretty brutal for this deck. And it's really only like amazing into purple green and green gray. Both of which are important matchups to be good against. I think we're already pretty good into green gray though, so I don't know that we need 3 copies of it. But as for the 3-drops, I do think 3 of the uninkable and 2 of the inkable was the perfect number. I don't think I'd change that.
Yeah, and so how did the workshops overall perform? Because I know a lot of lists, they're not on the queens, they're not on the workshops, but it seems like it helped you grind out a lot of the matchups, like grind out of green steel's discard
Great.
completely.
Yeah, it's super important against the quote mirror unquote the traditional blue-red decks. It's just the most important card. You get one of them in play, and your inevitability just goes nuts. I mean, you just cannot. It's really difficult to lose a red-blue matchup in which one of you has workshop and the other doesn't. As far as green-gray is concerned, it's not important to the stabilization because like you kind of need to be playing out dudes and eventually playing Haram and trying to keep up with the Bucky discard. But it isn't important after you've kind of hit the stabilization point against Green Gray to bring the game back, and so that's nice. And then against Blue Steel, it can just sometimes turn your late game dead draws into real draws for 1 additional mana, which is nice. Card advantage is kind of a nebulous thing against decks that play Whole New World, and so it's a little bit less relevant there. But it still comes up, and it's still important.
So my next question, and this is probably the one that intrigued me the most in the entire list, was only a single Be Prepared. So I
Same.
started
I have that
format
actually
with
on my question.
Yeah. I started this format with only 1 in most of my control lists. And then I went to 2, and then I went to 3, and then a lot of my lists actually went to 3 or 4 very quickly because I just found that like you're either gonna 2-cost Ursula it out of your hand, or they're gonna discard it early, and you're gonna need to draw into it. Was that different for you? Did you feel like this version of the list just kind of didn't need to be prepared?
Well, you kind of touched on the reason that we're not playing it, and that's because this deck that's the only song in the entire deck. So now that we're not playing One Jump Ahead or How Far I'll Go, this deck is entirely 2-drop Ursula proof except for Be Prepared. And so it's really powerful to turn that card off in a lot of matchups, and that's kind of why we weren't playing it, was because once you're not playing any songs, every song that you play sort of dramatically increases the value of that 2-drop Ursula against you. and so we wanted to keep that to as low a number as possible. We were actually on 0 for the longest time,
Wow.
but that felt really, yeah. Unfortunately, once you get to open deck list, it's just kind of important to threaten it, and so we kind of always wanted to play 1, but it's not unthinkable to go to 2. It's definitely a good card in certain circumstances. It's really good against red purple, which is one of the matchups that, as you said, is a little bit of a struggle for us. So I could certainly entertain going to 2 of it, but I liked it for 1 for this event.
John, do
Okay.
you mind if I
And
ask a
then I
question
think
really
one of
quickly?
my final questions I had before we move on to Allie's questions
Okay.
was, what would you change going forward?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I think the 8-drop Sisu probably should be 2 instead of 3. There were just a couple too many times when it was dead for it being an uninkable 8-drop. You could consider going to 2, be prepared, like you said. You could consider going to Vital Sphere over Medallion Weights. I think the 2 Stone Dragon was correct. Stone Dragon really overperformed while I was there, but I don't know that 3 is the correct. 3 is probably not right. I think 3 Workshop is correct. Yeah, I think the Sisu and then potentially Medallion Weights for Vital Sphere is the only changes I'd make.
Okay, so you just run it back basically almost the same given
Yeah.
second
I think
opportunity.
I'm
Wow.
pretty pleased with how it went. Yeah. So,
I mean, you did amazing.
thank you.
Okay, so one of my
So,
questions was, do you think that the 2-game format affected your uninkable versus inkable count?
Interesting. I'm not sure that I specifically thought about it, except in the sense that it made me sort of less willing to play higher variance ink counts, which I guess isn't even really true because I would consider this deck pretty high variance in terms of its ink. Um, I don't know. I think that it affected my, like, I really wanted a deck that was very consistent on the draw, and that was one of the big appeals of blue red to me, was that
Okay.
I wanted a deck that felt like when I was going second, it still had a very good chance of winning. Um, and part of that is influenced by the amount of inkables in the deck. So in that sense, I suppose you could say so.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I always wondered, like, do you think like you would have more if it
Mhm.
was like a 3-game format like it once was or stuff like that? But
Yeah,
my
that's a really
other
interesting question.
question was more of the sense is, do you think that if you were to play an extra be prepared, how do you feel about going over 60 cards? Because we have a huge
I'm
debate in our team where you don't really go over 60 cards.
I am of the opinion that this deck wants to be 60 cards, and the reason for that is because, so basically you can go over 60 cards if the delta between your best card and the rest of the deck is not very high and you like have the ability to draw a bunch of cards, then I think that's fine. Unfortunately, the delta between Haram, Flaversham, and every other card in Disney Lorcana is so high that this deck needs to be 60 cards, because every card that reduces your chances of drawing Haram is a mistake in this deck. I mean, the difference between games that include Haram and games that don't is just so massive that there is almost no conceivable benefit to a 61st card that outweighs it being 156th less of a Haram. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know that I always want to try to get the Haram off the board when I'm playing red blue.
Right. No, I mean a lot of in many matchups, it's just the only card against Bucky specifically, these Bucky gray decks, it basically is the only card that matters. I mean, that card is just a complete mistake. I mean, it is so broken.
Yeah. And then my final question was more about like your overall experience with the Chicago tournament. How did you feel about it?
I thought it was great. I thought it was really well set up. I thought the judging team was definitely pretty good. The head judge's announcements at the beginning were really well said. I thought he was very eloquent up there. I thought the event ran smoothly. I mean, we didn't do any repairs as far as I'm aware. The stream crew was great. The stream room was awesome. The day 2 stuff went well. All the side events seemed like they were a lot of fun. They were firing consistently. Yeah, the weekend was great. I don't have any complaints.
Do you believe that there should be more rounds?
Yeah, like just I wish there were more rounds. I understand that that's like a pretty big time constraint. Like you'd have to bring the Swiss into day 2, which could be hard for some people, and I understand why they don't. But I wish there were more rounds for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Anybody of the viewers have any questions for Brandon? We would love to answer them. My also last question is I wanted to ask while we were like talking before, but you said that the Fang crossbow was your like favorite card when you were playing, but you only play one of them.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't really get away with playing too many of that. It's just
Okay.
too often ink. I shouldn't say it was my favorite card. Like I think it's the card that overperformed based on how many people even know what that card does, which is I
I
think
know I
really fun.
didn't.
I know it's really fun when you can get a card that like was really under the radar and then it works a lot better um, than I think people expect it to. But it's correct as a one of. I think it's not that good.
And then LOL White Warlock wants to know if you would play that deck for the next tournament.
Yeah, I at the moment I intend to. With Pixelborn going down, I'm not really going to have as much um, gameplay on basically anything else going into Dallas, Fort Worth. So um, at the moment, it's definitely what I expect to be playing, but we'll see what happens.
And then do you think you're going to change up your deck for set champs? We have Ryan freaking Miles wants to know if you would, what deck would you play for set champs?
I think I'm going to probably play this one for set champs. I think I'm probably going to play it -1 8-drop Sisu plus something undecided yet. It is,
Okay.
but ultimately I'm probably going to run it back.
So we're going to do one less of these guys.
Right.
And then Health Clip 501 wants to know, do you miss consistency without Tala and Develop?
Yeah. Um, I think the answer to that is yes. I enjoyed that aspect of the red blue decks in set 3, like being able to dig for Diamond and Tamatoa in the mirror in the late game was important, but you kind of just substitute that with drawing more cards, period. Like if Tala looks at the top 2 and draws one, but my workshop draws me 2 cards, then I still saw that card that I would have picked with Tala, right? And so then it kind of ends up being the same thing wherein instead of looking for cards, I just have a hand of 15 cards that contains the card I want.
Oh, very cool.
Mhm.
Do we have any other questions, guys?
So he answered pretty much all my questions. My curiosity has been satiated.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if there's any other questions that are coming up from the chat. It's been
Yep.
very lively. Do you think that we have another question for you, Brandon. Do you think that there's any shot that you would want to try Jim Hawkins and Location?
Oh, there is so much of a shot. I'm in love with the Jim Hawkins and
That's
locations
a nice
package.
combo.
Oh, it's so good. And there are so many decks that are weak to locations right now, that I really wanted like a red silver Jim Hawkins, and then John Silver, I think, is the 3-drop, and like
Yeah.
locations type deck. We tried so many different versions of that. I could never get one that I felt was consistently good. Just like a week before the Chicago Challenge, there was some European event where someone got second place playing some red blue deck that played McDuck Manor and like 4 Judy Hops or something like that. And I thought that deck was so cool, and we tried that a little bit. I just couldn't get it to anywhere that I liked it. But as far as am I interested? Oh yeah, definitely interested.
Maybe that's what you'll change up and add that
I know.
card.
Maybe get a little bit more experimental.
And then we have another viewer that wants to know, did you play any other games before switching to Lorcana?
I don't know, John, did I play any other games?
Yes. I'll let you answer that, though.
I'm new to this. Sorry.
No. Me and John both played Force of Will for the longest time. It's like an anime Magic the Gathering clone.
Oh,
And
very
it,
cool. So what
yeah,
made you
we,
switch to Lorcana?
well, Force of Will doesn't, I guess it's not technically dead, but it's like dead as far as my ability to play it is concerned. And so I was kind of just looking for a new game, and I just followed a lot of friends that I made from Force of Will over to Lorcana. And I think that John and then Ryan F. and Miles, who are in chat, were at one point going to the Denver PPG for Lorcana, which was set one. Must have been like 9 months ago, 10, 12 months ago. I don't know.
Yeah, it's about a year at this point.
Yeah, and they were both going, and so I was just like, yeah, I'll check it out. So then I played it a bit, went there, really had a great time, and then kind of got hooked into Lorcana that way.
That's awesome. I
Mhm.
mean, it's a great community. I know I just started in December
Oh,
and
I
I'm
love
loving
it.
every minute of it.
Yeah, it is a great community. That is true.
It's like very positive. I have nothing negative to say about the Lorcana. The Lumineers, that's what we're called.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, guys? This would be a great time for us to get out if we have any like tweaks for our red blue decks that we're playing.
I played about every conceivable version of Red Blue going into this, so
That's awesome.
a lot of Red Blue insights.
So one thing I did want to ask you, did you see the list that made top 64 with, I believe it was 4 Manor and 3 RLS Legacy? It was like
Oh yeah.
it was like the red steel version, but blue red. They were trying to
Mhm.
like one jump ahead into like a turn 3 Manor.
Oh yeah. I think that's really neat. I think that there's a lot. Did they play Hawkins?
I don't. Let me see. I don't have the list.
Who is it?
saved
I can look it up. I have
but-
it. John,
Yeah,
do you know the name of the person?
I know you got top 32, but no.
32?
Regardless, I think that's really cool. I think
Here
that
it
that
is.
person identified correctly
Oh.
a major location weakness to like a lot of good meta decks right now, and I think that that's really solid. I think that it's possible that due to some of like our internal testing, I was a little bit too scared of purple red going into this event. Like I was just really I really thought purple red was going to both show up more and show up better. And so I was kind of awful at a little location version because they're really good at dealing with locations, and so it wasn't really where my head was at. But I think like especially looking back at how top 64 ended up
Dewey.
playing out, I think the locations version was a smart call. Like it definitely could have been the correct thing to play.
I actually don't think it's Dewey. But we did have a question in the chat that says, what's your matchup spread? So your best and worst matchups.
Well, my best matchup is the traditional version of Red Blue that's not playing Workshop. I was 6-0 against it over the day, and it felt, I mean, just no game even felt close. It's just ridiculously good into that deck. We are good into blue steel kind of in the same way that the deck that like the red blue used to be good into blue steel, and that we just like have removal for their Tamatoa and their Haram, and they don't have removal for our Tamatoa and for our Haram, and so we kind of just run away with the game that way. Although the matchup is still definitely losable, especially if they get like Cogsworths down while we don't have 8-drop Sisu, or they get like wheels going or whole new worlds once we like our card advantage engines are online. And so that matchup is a bit dubious, but I still think we're pretty favored. I think we're pretty favored into the Bucky lists. Purple red is an interesting one. It's like if they get castles and we don't get Maui's, then the matchup is extremely difficult. If we get well-timed Maui's, well-timed Corollas, we can take care of their stuff on time, then the matchup is winnable. But it's probably the one that creates the most problems for us. And like any deck, we can always just lose to the double Bucky perfect curve out that basically any deck can lose to.
Hate the double Bucky.
I know.
One thing, LOL White Warlock. Actually, I don't see the link. Can you just give me the name? I think they're
I mean,
helping me
what?
find the name of the one that John was talking about with the
Oh,
2 McDuck Manors. Let's see. Are you going to Texas?
I am. Yep.
That's awesome. At least it's getting so much harder to get into these events.
It really is.
What
I'm
about Germany?
I'm not going to Germany. No, I think I'm going to go to all the North America ones. I think I'm going to go to Canada in August, and then Vegas and Seattle. I think that's going to be all the ones that I do.
So, this is the deck that played the 2. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find it. The McDuck Manor and the RSL Legacy. It was Christopher Brown, and he did play Jim Hawkins with it.
Cool. Yeah, what a great list. I mean, I think that is yeah, I think that this list is very metacognizant and very intelligent. So I could see us running something like this back for like store championships or something. I think this deck is way cooler, so than the traditional red blue decks.
And your deck, you would believe, is like more consistent?
I haven't played this Jim Hawkins version enough to like say that confidently.
Okay.
But yeah, it definitely, it looks like it's doing what it's doing, and like I mentioned, I think a lot of decks are very weak to this kind of deck, and so very cool.
And then Healthcliff 501 says, it seems like you want to play Hercules to one-shot castles.
Hercules, that's the 7/5 rush uninkable, or 7/4 rush uninkable. Is that right?
I believe so. John, do you know?
Yeah. I know it's a 7-power Russian inkable. It's basically just a one-shot castle button.
Yeah, it's unfortunately so. Like as I mentioned this earlier, but Maui is not actually a very good card in this deck. Like I wanted to play fewer Mauis, except for how necessary it is to like um, get yourself some ability to deal with castles eventually. But it being inkable is kind of what it like allows it to get away with that. So like you can ink Maui in most matchups. An uninkable Maui, I think, would just be pretty unacceptable for this deck, even though it does one-shot castle, and that is
It would like clog up your hand a little bit too until you can
right.
get to use it.
If it was inkable now, that would be great. We'd play it over Maui, but
That might be broken at that point.
oh, if only. But no, unfortunately, it's not to be.
And then LOL White Warlock says, Vital Spear works good against castles as well.
Yep, I completely agree. And that's a large part of the reason that I think I like Vital Sphere potentially over Medallion Weights. I'm not like 100% on that yet, but I think that that's a really strong argument for it. Makes your
Awesome.
Tamatoas be able to deal with castles, and makes Cruella get 5 damage on it. It's useful.
Great. Any other questions, guys? Thank you so much for all of your guys' feedback and questions, getting involved. I love it. John, did you think of any more? Ooh, we do have one.
No, we have one. Cool.
Yeah. We have might be late to the party, but maybe this was answered. How important or how good was Stone Dragon?
Loved it. It's one of the cards that really tied the deck together in a way that was pretty surprising to me. In the red blue matchups, like it's just really important to get to that sort of terminal workshop point when you have the like 12, 13. What's the resource called in this game? Ink. And you get like how you have a workshop in play, and then suddenly all of your items turn into more cards, more items, more cards, more items. And so getting to that high ink count very quickly, especially before they can threaten their accidental Tamatoa dime stuff, is important. Against Bucky, it's just amazing because it's practically draw a card every turn because they're challenging your hand so much with the Buckies in play that it's really becomes difficult to both like ink and develop a board constantly. And so being able to turn the cards that Bucky makes you discard into ink and then like still be scaling up. There were a lot of times against like the Bucky matchup when I'd activate Queen, get Stone Dragon into play, and then for the rest of the game only be inking out of my graveyard with Stone Dragon, and then like still being able to play basically one behind because the ink enters tapped, but ultimately still being able to play on curve against them, and that was super important. We talked about going to 3 of it when we thought that the Bucky matchup was going to be very, very popular because it's just so good against Bucky, but at the end of the day, we sort of didn't expect Bucky to be all that popular, and so we ended up cutting it down to 2.
Okay, thank
I shouldn't say
you.
we didn't expect Bucky to be all that pop. We didn't expect it to be like so popular that our deck needed to warp around it. That's what I should say.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
It does seem like a great card.
Yeah, and the other thing is that like specifically items that cost 3 just get like a lot of bonus in this deck because Queen can cheat them in. And like when Queen hits a 3-drop item, it just feels so insane that you basically got that item and now a free 3/3 that they basically need to deal with, or it's going to continue to create advantage. When she hits a 3-drop item, and it's kind of like she just said, draw a card, produce 3 ink, which and it's just like such an incredible tempo swing while she's in play. And so that's like part of the reason the workshops get justified, that the Fang crossbow gets justified, that the Stone Dragon gets justified. Um, and yeah, so that's part of the reason that it's so good in this deck.
So, a lot of new people are coming to Lorcana, like myself. So,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give somebody that's just starting out?
Oh, just starting out. Well, have fun. Is
Yes.
that too cliche? Um, yeah, yeah. Don't take it too seriously if you're just starting. Have fun with it. Enjoy the simplicity of the game, the beauty of the art and the IP, the friends that you get to make along the way. And as far as advice for like playing the game, I think that the thing that I see new people struggle with the most, like at our local shop, and as I like watch friends of mine that I'm trying to get into the game, is I think that a lot of people underestimate the power of like the mulligan step in this game. That like when you draw 7 cards and you have basically 7 yes or no choices about whether or not to draw an additional card and get rid of one, a lot of people sort of uh, lean back on heuristics for that. Like they'll pick a 1, 2, 3 curve and then get rid of the rest, and not really think about sort of just how deeply complex that first stage of the game is. And so there's probably a lot of ground to be gained in a lot of people sort of getting a deeper and more nuanced understanding of the mulligan step of their deck. Is that the kind
Very
of answer you're looking
interesting.
for?
Yeah, exactly. Looks like I
Yeah,
know
okay.
when I play, I make sure I have
Mm.
my 1, 2, and 3 turn.
Right,
I'm gonna
right.
figure it
I
out from
think
there. But now
yeah,
it's
people are
like,
like, oh, keep everything that costs 3 or less. Mulligan all the expensive cards. And I think that's a really great step one. And part of the reason I think this game is so inviting to new players is that like you are allowed to basically just skip thinking about your mulligan if you want to. And I think a lot of new players do that and they play the game and they have a lot of fun with it. But the mulligan phase alone is just an ocean of depth that this game has, which I just think is really cool.
that's
Yeah, I would like to
awesome.
chime in. I think this game has probably the most powerful mulligan of any card game I've played.
I can't think of one that's any better.
So now, since like the mulligan is so powerful, what should I be looking for when I'm mulliganing?
Although that's the beautiful part about this game is that it depends on your deck and it depends on what you're maximizing for. Like if you are Like, is your deck need specific combos? Do you know what you're playing against? Are there cards that are really important in that matchup? Are there cards that go really well together? Like if you already have a popsicle or you already have a haram, then you get to keep a popsicle. But if you have a popsicle and no haram, then you have to mulligan that. And like then like that kind of like it's impossible to describe the like you almost couldn't write on a sticky note a mulligan for like the red blue deck, right? Because it is so complex, and I think that is, and also because I wouldn't, I probably didn't mulligan exactly the same in every single game because. Or like if you had given me the same hand multiple times at different points throughout the day, I might have mulliganed differently because it is so complicated, and I just personally think that is really awesome.
That's so funny because I was just about to ask you, like, what's your perfect hand? Like, if you open up this
Uh,
hand, what are you like
do I
that
get
you
to know what
know?
I'm playing against or
Yeah.
blind?
Probably that you know what you're playing against.
Well, then it would depend on what I'm playing against, I guess. Like against Bucky, if I know my opponent is playing Bucky, I mulligan every card not named Haram Flavorsham 100% of the time. Like if I open a 7 that does not contain Haram, every 7 goes back. And if I do have Haram, then I keep Popsicle, and if I'm on the play, then also like whether or not you're on the play or the draw. If I'm on the play, then I don't keep Cruella, and if I'm on the draw, I do keep Cruella. And so like
That's
yeah, I mean I
so
almost couldn't
funny.
describe
It's
more
like
deeper than
so
that.
much to like think about when you're just playing Lorcana.
Yeah, I mean it's the first decision of the game, and I think it really is the decision that causes the most gap between like people that are deeply invested in the game and know what they're doing and people that are new. Like the very first decision of the game like can will is a gigantic chasm of difficulty, which that's not meant to sound intimidating. I think that it's actually really cool that the game hides so much complexity behind a decision that seems really sort of benign, which I think is great game design. I mean, I think this game really appeals to newer players because a lot of the complexity is hidden and it like allows people to feel like the game uh, isn't terribly complicated when they're first starting, even though like I think that a lot of people that have played the game for a long time will agree this is one of the more complicated games on the market right now. This is one of the games that has the most decisions to make constantly, even though it doesn't have a stack, even though it doesn't have blocking or whatever other things people think are required for a complex game. This game is extremely complicated.
Yeah, like I was talking to some people and they said that it could be even more complicated than like Magic because with Magic like you kind of know what your like lands are, but here you have to really strategically think about what you're going to make your ink.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know that it's that like difficulty isn't exactly a linear thing, so it's like hard to say like this is more or less difficult than Magic. But I think it definitely it's I think it's definitely easy to argue that it has some elements that are more difficult than Magic that are more depthful, um, or than any other TCG really. And so yeah, I agree.
That's awesome. Is there any other questions? John, did you think of any new ones?
No, I just wanted to say thank you again for coming on. Greatly appreciate you coming on. I had a
Oh, it's
great
my
time
pleasure.
playing
Thanks
all
for
this.
having me.
Yeah.
Yes,
I love
thank
yapping
you.
about Lorcana. Talk about this game forever. I love it so much.
I feel like I can too.
Yeah.
Just seeing if anybody pops up in the chat. Oh, we have a final question.
Oh boy.
Let's see. How are you going to be practicing How are you going to be practicing now that Pixelborn is
Oh.
no longer an option?
Oh goodness, that is an excellent question. I do not know. I'm just gonna be really sad. I mean like the real answer is I'm probably gonna start, I don't know, playing webcam games more, trying to bug people to play with me over the internet, and attending more locals, I guess. I don't know. I honestly don't have a great answer for that because I don't think there is a great answer. Losing Pixelborn is a downright tragedy, and it is going to dramatically reduce the amount of Lorcana that I'm able to play. And so nothing, I guess, is the answer, is going to completely replace it, but at least a little bit is going to be webcam games.
Yeah,
Maybe
webcam.
TTS, I don't know. Maybe Lackey, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, if you ever want to play, I'm always down to play via webcam.
Oh, of course. I will need more people to play with.
Yeah, I think a majority of the chat is going to have to probably switch to webcam. That's
Mhm.
what it's looking like.
Hope desperately that they put out an online client themselves. Probably not,
Yeah,
though.
I was a little disappointed from the Lorecast a little bit.
I know, me too. Crossing, what was terrible is at the beginning of the Chicago Challenge event, the head judge was up there and he was like, "We have someone from Ravensburg that's going to come up here, and they have an announcement that you guys are all going to like." And I was sitting there in the audience, and I was like, "Oh, my client, it's." And then it wasn't, which was sad.
Oh, they really hyped it up.
I know, and I got baited. I baited
So
myself.
they baited you twice
I know. It was so
for
sad.
the Lorecast and in Chicago.
I know. Just tragic.
Okay, viewers, let's say goodbye to Brandon and John and thank them for such an awesome interview. We appreciate them. I'm probably going to be staying on. If you guys want to come chat, we can kind of just talk about what happened in the interview and if you have any other questions. Thank you so much again, guys. Okay, so what did we think? Let's play some Pixelborn while we chat about it. His rationale behind the queen, I honestly wanted to start playing red-blue. It's really cool that you have to have that 20 items in order to have the ratio to play an item for free with the queen. I'm also not mad at this hand. And we get to go first. Okay, let's ink a... And we're going to play a little baby Maleficent. Ooh, we got a friend, and he got a Chernabog. Oh yes, I want to introduce everybody to my emotes. They are Rapunzel themed because we all know that that's my favorite movie. And hopefully you guys will subscribe and be able to use them. And as you guys all know, I appreciate your support so much. I actually had a really good time with the interview. He was very easy to talk to and super nice. I've actually never met a really negative or mean Lumineer though. Ooh, he got rid of my thing. But that's okay, because I still got my 2 points. And I think the best emote I have is this little Pascal guy. I can't wait for one of you guys to use it. Ooh, the Flynn. We have to get rid of that guy. So let's ink a Sisu and let's brawl him. And we're gonna quest and we're gonna pass. Ooh, a Maleficent to draw. And we got a rabbit. So I think let's just hard play friends to draw 2 cards. Because we need to ink something. We did get a castle. We love to see that. Okay. That's fine. We're not worried. Oh, he put down a baby Maleficent. Big Sisu. Let's put down the rabbit. Okay, we need to keep our ink up just in case he decides to span the board. And I just also want to say thank you guys so much for commenting, asking questions, being engaging. You guys made this interview so lovely. Ooh, we got a crab. So let's sing Friends. Ooh, we got a Sisu and a rabbit. Okay, and again, we don't really want... So he's not going to have any... He's not going to get the 3 points for the Flynn. So we can just play the other rabbit. And we have Brawl. And we... Ink? Did we ink, guys? We did not ink yet. And it's an action. I don't really think Big Sisu is doing anything for us this time. Okay. Ooh, we have to draw the card. Ooh, we get to play our combo. I love playing the Jim Hawkins combo. But it's like, ooh, he's really going wide. Okay, so we got a snake. I think I'm going to quest and then be prepared. He's a full hand though. But I just don't think it's really... And then I'm going to follow up with my Jim Hawkins combo. I'm going to do the big wombo combo. Wada bee bada ba. I'm just being silly. I actually feel great after that interview. I feel like it's just made me alive. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Oh, I forgot to pass. Silly me. And hopefully we're going to do more of them. Ooh, Big Sisu and a Flynn. And this guy has 8. But if I was to do my Flynn combo, ooh, okay. I know what I'm going to do. We're going to play Flynn and my castle. The beautiful. I'm going to select. Ink a well played. We got a well played. We'd love to see that. Ink a LeFou. And we're going to play Brawl to get rid of this Flynn. I want another well played from him. Oh, Lady Tremaine. Rough. But Azizu can't even kill my castle. So we're gonna at least get the 2 points. Let's see. A rush character would have been nice. We shouldn't play Flynn. And what am I gonna do? Let's play this in order to draw the card. Pua. So I think we should ink the Flynn. So we have 5, so we can play the crab and Pua. I really want him to choose. And he got rid of my castle. Well played. Ooh, got rid of my Pua. He didn't want me to get those 2, but we technically didn't lose it because it's just getting shuffled back in. I love that card for that. A rabbit as well. So I think I'm going to, we have another crab. 2, 2. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pump up my crab. This to kill this. We're going to do a crazy thing right now. Pump up this. To kill this. This stays alive. And then we're going to play this. I'm trying to go for the win. Hi, Kyle. And let's pass. I mean, it's 6 to 10. Okay, he decided to go after my goat. My rabbit. We got the Jim Hawkins. I hope my next card is a castle. We'll go after the crab. Ooh, he's inking a goat. That probably means he has another goat. Ooh, Sizu. Okay. I wonder if that's a be prepared in his hand. Okay, we have a rabbit. Let's. Hi, Melissa. Ooh, we have another be prepared. Has 2 damage. I think we're going to quest with it. And I think we're going to just pass. Because I'm assuming he has a be prepared in his hand. Ooh, she gets to draw a card, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, if I have a character exarded. Well played, well played. Ooh, a pirate's life. Okay, so I think we're going to play a pirate's life. Because why not? And now this only has 3. We can get rid of the rabbit again. It's like, do I even trade for the goat or quest with it? But I still got a point, but he's losing. We're going to Lady Tremaine and do an even change there. And can I? And we're gonna still hope we get a castle next turn. 2. Ooh. There's the rabbit. He's probably gonna put down more cards. We got it. We got it. I can't wait for him to see me play this combo again. And we gotta go. A Maleficent. Okay, here it comes. So he'll get 1, 2, 3. That'd be 17 to my 17. So I don't think. He has a Maui. Okay. We still win next turn. A rabbit. We got there, guys. You too. So we're just going to quest right now. And we won.